Thank you for joining us. This is Brave New History. I'm here with Worshipful Nick Sedich, past master of Minnehaha Lodge.
That's one of
I
them.
got that in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me on the show, Elliot.
Yep. And so we'll talk a bit about Freemasonry and maybe misconceptions, maybe some history.
Sounds like
And
fun.
yep. And so what's your favorite misconception with
Probably
Freemasonry?
the Apple Tree Tavern.
I'm not familiar.
Right in the Duncan's Constitution, they talked about the first meeting of the London lodges, and the organization of United Grand Lodge of England in 1717, and they talked about this Apple Tree Tavern, and that didn't exist then. So, maybe it existed in 1723. I think they actually had the date right around 1720. I think it existed, but that place didn't exist, and us doing the whole celebration of the United Grand Lodge of England, the 300 year we just celebrated a few years ago. It's really funny that we go through and celebrate that when it's not really kind of the foundation of everything. Is it kind of a good celebration of when we went public? Yeah, I think it's okay. But are the dates relevant and right on, according to Anderson's Constitution and 23 and 38? Freak no. It's like, I don't know. It's like, so it's, we can draw things back to, Kilwinning Chapel for 1349, and that could be a real date for, operative meets speculative masonry. But the fact is that we celebrate this, thing. It's just, we should call it our cotillion or our coming out party, because it definitely had nothing to do with the origin of Freemasonry. So
Yeah. You wonder where that idea came from. Maybe the pub's owner was saying, Freemasonry was started here. And in commemoration, we're offering 2-for-1 drinks tonight and half off on all appetizers. So you should come here and spend money.
there was, so much, especially with the London Grand Lodges that came forward, there was so much politics involved, and then the Anderson's Constitution was rewritten several times. It was done by committee. So where was the truth, and was there any written minutes? Not then, 1723 there was.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, I know a lot of Masons, and I'll tell you one right thing now, they love their minutes. Boy, they love reading them before the meeting, at the end of the meeting, and, it's like, woohoo,
Mm-hmm.
let's get out our Duncan's ritual and really get into these minutes, because minutes are awesome.
That's
by
so
the way,
true.
if you're in a lodge and they're still reading the minutes at the beginning and end, please make a motion. Try to get that set at the Grand Lodge level. It's just a waste of time. Can't get 30 people together or 10 people together, and kill off another 10, 15 minutes. We're talking real man hours of doing something, whether it's education or creation.
That's true. Like any other organization I'm a part of, they don't recap the previous meeting during the meeting, do they? That is kind of interesting. Though, there's a lot with the minutes. I don't know if they read the minutes back in the day, but there's a lot we know about Masonry from the minutes. Like somebody was reprimanded for hiring a non-Mason to do their chimney. So hiring somebody outside the fraternity, and that's where we get like that must have been like a big thing back in the day. But
I think at the Apple Tree Tavern during the first, Grand Lodge meeting, somebody got fined for using a cell phone. Yeah.
yeah,
And it was
that
$20.
would
So
be well, with the Anderson Constitutions, it's been a long time since I've read it.
good.
But they go into like the origins of Masonry have to do with, what do they say in there?
They go back to biblical times.
Yeah. And Yeah, that's
What
another thing. Yeah.
we watch all of these things that happened and became popular in the Age of Reasons, the rekindling of the Druids, Freemasonry with many, many, many other orders that were there. And a lot of these orders all tried to bring their roots back to mystery schools and to, ancient Egypt and Greece and, biblical times if it was a heavy Christian organization. And, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a nice story, but it is just a nice story. There's nothing else to it. It's not saying that this is a fact and there's nothing to draw. And it's like, what do we know about the Druids? Is that they liked mistletoe a lot and they thought it was a
Mhm.
blessing and not like a parasitical organism that lived on a tree, you know. But the things we know now about them is just there's very, very little because nearly everything was wiped out. So um through no one church's fault of their own. But it was one of those things where they all try to draw that back, and that's something people have done with Freemasonry quite often. And we have several illusions in the craft that way predate, what we've done.
Yeah, like what, for example?
The building of the second temple, the building of the third
Got it,
temple.
got it, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've never taken that to mean that that was real, right? That was literal history. Though I guess some people do.
It's
Yeah.
with the Noahide legend from before and the Hiramic legend from what we teach now and what we do. We use it as a parable to teach, but and then we take these values and put it on these historical characters or biblical characters, and we just use it as a lesson to teach, and that's what we should enjoy out of it. Um, People who take it as truth, they should be sat down, and talked to,
Yeah.
you know.
Or it's true, but it didn't literally happen, right? It happened figuratively. This is symbolic truth that we're talking about.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and so yeah, you alluded to before the. Oh, look at this. We already have. Oh my goodness, we got spam in the in the chat.
we have spam in the
Uh,
comments already. Oh, I gotta look
no,
at the comments.
yeah, how do I delete? I'm gonna. Oh,
Oh,
there
my
you go. I can
sass.
block.
Okay. Geez, the sass.
Oh, that was
Who's that?
you. I forget what was it.
No,
Oh,
that's
when we
Brave
had the
New
audio
History.
issues in the beginning,
Okay.
I was. You're like, well, it doesn't make sense to talk if I can't hear you. So I'm like,
Oh, okay.
that
I am
gotta.
sassy.
Yeah,
Brave New
absolutely.
History.
Yes,
Why can't I
indeed.
comment? Oh no, I'd have to log in.
I'm sure you can.
So where were we? We were leaving off. You said that I alluded to.
Oh yeah. We've got before the Hiramic legend, we've got the legend. It was
Noah.
Noah.
Noah, yep.
Yeah,
Noah child husband.
which is interesting. Like what does that even have to do with masonry? Like,
What did a metal crafter who built two
no,
columns out of
Noah.
you know, bronze in front of King Solomon's temple in the Old Testament and then
No,
just disappeared and lived a whole life? What did he have to do with it? I mean, like, what did
Noah didn't
what did
build
most
King
of these
Solomon's.
people? What?
Not Noah.
No, no, it didn't have anything to do with that. Why would you think that King Solomon's temple would be in the Noahide degree? It wouldn't be. It would be a totally different lesson. That's the whole point. So the whole thing is that, there's trials in our current, degree system, and there's probably trials in the former. When people talk about what the lessons were in the Noahide degrees, um, it's we could say it's a lot of different things, but I think it would still be three different steps, and three different challenges. Um, I'm reading Stinky Paradox. I would
Oh
argue
yeah,
that
here,
believing it's only myth as
let's
much of
put
an
that up here.
assumption.
Okay,
um,
sneaky paradox. I would argue that believing it's only myth is just as much of an assumption.
And I always ask, what is assuming, or what is assume, making an ass out of you and me? So, it's just it's one of those things where it's like, there's myth that has, basis in truth. There's myths that are just combined parables, and things along those lines. But this is a construction, the one we're talking about. And I'm sure the Noahide degree was purely a construction about what we know about Noah from the Old Testament, and, what his miracle works were, what his ark was, how he had 3 kids, 3 sons, how he drank himself into a freaking stupor. And one of the more remarkable things about Noah, though, is he didn't die. Noah walked into the kingdom of heaven and never perished. So, where does the challenges come from it? Where do the lessons come from it? They were constructed, to teach an important lesson. And I think that's absolutely fine to construct stories to teach good moral lessons. Um, I think that maybe it was less religious going with the current legend and the current teachings, but it's still Judeo-Christian, based.
It's less religious now.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
I think it would be
And
part of a holy rite, probably in the former.
what's that?
I think it would have been almost a holy rite in the former, the way it was done. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why it was changed. Because
Yeah.
in the age of reason, secularism definitely prevailed. We take a look, just take a look at American history. It's like, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and when was that first written? It was set up that any human being on the face of the planet could take the pledge because it wasn't dedicated to our flag or our country, but the flag of their country, and that. Then we of course make it very American. And then in 1955, in the middle of the McCarthy Red Scare, we had under God, you know, and it's just like, okay, well, we're done with McCarthy and we're done with the scare. And,
Mhm.
there's a lot of atheists out there that I think are good people and agnostics and people who worship the goddess and have several gods or, anything else. And why do we still have it in there? It should be for all the people who live in this country, who call themselves citizens. So take out under
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, which, I've found that it does flow a little bit better. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's almost like you're kind of getting into run-on sentence territory, right?
It
One
was
nation,
rewritten.
under God, indivisible, with liberty, right?
Yep. And when
So,
it was introduced, Red Skelton, actually brother Red Skelton, he actually did a famous little video on that and television and everything, and became really, really popular. So, yeah, screw you, brother Skelton.
yeah, good
I'm going to
deal.
whisper some kind words of kindness when I reach the celestial gate. Sorry, brother.
Yes, indeed. So, let's see. What other misconceptions would you say you could point out that might be?
It's funny. We just talked about the Pledge of Allegiance,
Yep.
and in our jurisdiction, now I'm a member of Minneapolis or Minnehaha Lodge number 165, and that's in the Grand Lodge, Minnesota, AF and AM. And then I'm also a member of Anchorhilia Lodge number 2, Prince Hall affiliated free and accepted Masons of Minnesota. And in the most worshipful Prince Hall associated lodge, they also do the Pledge of Allegiance. Um, People think that that was there for
Mhm.
all time, but the Pledge of Allegiance is a recent addition in the last 100 years, or less, for our for us, because it was one of those things where it's like during the Civil War, some of the greatest acts of kindness and compassion were put together by Union and Confederate soldiers that would meet, not have their weapons with them, and inside a Masonic lodge and during a lodge meeting. And, it's one of those things where no one pledged to the Union or the Confederate at the beginning of those meetings, and it's like we want to be open as a a brotherhood for all man besides the, political, citizenship, what they're recognized as. We want to be able to meet without any of those barriers or borders. Same things go for ethnicity. Same things go for religion. Same things go for political views. You know, I'm reading the next Sticky Paradox quote. Sorry, this is a while back when I was reading about it.
Some people would equate the god of numbness in cattle. I've not read that
Catalyst
poems.
poems.
Okay, parodied. Well, that's way over my head. But yeah, do you have comment on that?
I do not.
Yeah,
So, but
I'm
it's one
not
of those,
familiar.
anything that we have inside of what our ritual is, from time memorial, is always going to be the same things. And you notice that we have a purification, at the beginning of the meeting, where we go through and we just have whatever degree we're opening on. We have that. Um, and that is an act of purification. And, as a fraternal brotherhood, one of the things that sets us apart is our ritual from the Elks and from anything else, from the Kiwanis. And, we have our ritual, which is very much the difference in how we set ourselves aside. And that doesn't mean every person in there is insanely mystical by any means, but it has that basis. So we have to be respectful of it, to say the least.
Um, yeah, I kind of agree with the flag thing. It does seem a bit out of place. I think. Does it have to be there per
Oh,
Grand Lodge?
no. Here's the thing with in our lodge room, as part of the decor and where we're at and everything, because of the country we're in, I do not have any problem with the American flag being displayed. You know, um, I would just like to see the Pledge of Allegiance at dinner or before the meeting, not just as part of the ritual. So, it's not like we want to tear down, it'd be kind of, yeah. We have a lot of really wonderful ideals that put this thing together,
Mhm.
by Brother Thomas Paine, and other worthy brothers who were founders. Um, but it's one of those things where we have to also, think about the openness of it, where we are. So
Yeah,
at the
I've
Canadian meetings, they actually they sing. They sing "O Canada," but
that is kind of
after
neat.
the meeting, after it's closed,
Hmm.
you know, I
You
think
know,
that's freaking amazing.
I think maybe I'm mistaken. St. Paul 3, they're a what's it called? Traditional Observance Lodge.
Mhm.
I've been to a few of their stated meetings. I don't think they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. I might be misremembering. Is it? I don't think you
Of
must
course,
do it.
because it's in the Minnesota code that they do the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the meeting. I'm sure they do it every single time because St. Paul 3 is a wonderful lodge and they adhere to all the rules of Minnesota Masonry.
Yeah, maybe they
And
just did it real fast that I
we
missed it.
wouldn't say otherwise at any time because we
Yep,
know they do the right thing every day.
yep,
Joe
absolutely.
Gonzalez is the secretary over there, by the way. Love you, worshipful brother. Most worshipful brother.
Yeah, he was Grandmaster of Prince Hall. Yeah.
2 years. And he did a really great thing. I got to go to the Midwest regional conference of Grandmasters and Eastern Star with Prince Hall in Kansas City, Missouri. And he's a wonderful leader and a great spokesman for Minnesota. And I don't know. I think that, the Prince Hall Masons in the state know how incredible he was. But unless you looked at his Facebook every day and see him traveling and talking, and he did a really wonderful thing for the state's masonry.
Hmm. Now, do they normally serve 2 years in Prince Hall?
No, no, it's a 1 year term. You're
Interesting.
elected for 1 year.
Yeah, but because of COVID or something like that, did you serve? You served
No,
during
it was
COVID?
pre-COVID.
Um,
No, there's been a couple
yeah,
of, Most Worshipful Brother Kimfus Muhammad served 2 years. Most Worshipful Brother Joe Gonzalez served 2 years. And, they both were really wonderful at, just righting the ship, as, technology changes and everything else. And it's really great. So
yeah,
very, very, very proud of those guys.
yeah, absolutely.
So we're talking about misconceptions. So how
Yeah,
about,
what else? Well, I know with like inside Masonry for the middle chamber lecture, which kind of goes through the orders of architecture, then there's the five senses and whatnot. That I've heard it said that, well, back in the
five
day, not a lot of,
senses, five pillars, five, there's lots of fives in there. There's
yeah,
lots of threes. There's lots of sevens. We'll
yeah.
leave it at that.
Well, yeah, no,
No, what was
100%.
the question? I'm sorry, Elliot.
Which I mean, I would, yeah, I mean, like we were talking before, like trying to equate that with the works of Plato. Like, so I kind of see that Platonic thought in there. Though the whole idea that people weren't very educated back in the day, so this is kind of catching them up and to educate them, which, I it just struck me like after the fact, I just took it with a grain of salt, like, okay, but these were highly educated men and they were gentlemen as they like very wealthy people, very highly educated. They'd be familiar with the five senses, right?
What
So,
followed? What
yep.
followed the age of reason?
What follows the age of reason?
Mhm. Industrial age, and one of the things is
Mhm.
that was the beginning of cities, and people were coming together quickly. The reduction of the agriculture, regime, and then the building of cities, and so we do have quite a lot of people that are coming into money and coming into work, and then coming to work, and then there wasn't a public education for them back then. It was one of those things where when William Preston wrote the lecture, he definitely did want to inspire people to continue learning. And masonry is what veiled in allegory, illustrated by symbols.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where um, every presentation that I do, on a working tool isn't about what's said in the ritual. It's about what the people knew at the age of reason, at the very, minimum of what this means and to us and how to continue learning. And I think that's really the important thing, is that not only is it, a wonderful degree in Freemasonry, and if you are going through the degrees or thinking about going through, and it'll be a night you never forget, but the education afterwards never stops, because
Mhm.
you'll never, ever, ever be able to get through all of it.
Yeah, definitely. With all the writing, like the works. I mean, if you were to just read Morals and Dogma, which we're in the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, and Moral and Dogma is huge. That's a thick book,
Hi,
and
my name's Nick Sedek, and I met a guy who said he read Worlds and Dogma 29 times the other day. And I was like,
yeah,
wow, you just killed a good portion of your life. I read it once through, didn't get a lot of it. Read it the second time, put it down during the East and West chapter a couple times, which is like 127 pages long.
that's like a third of the book.
But now I
Yeah,
realize that I really need to um, Stinky Paradox put five would refer to Venus more than not. Five is always referring to Venus and the goddess within. So, yes, Stinky Paradox. But it was one of those things where I got totally lost on my point. What was I talking about?
reading Morals and Dogma.
Reading some Moral Dogma. It's really wonderful to take in sections and to
Mhm.
use as a reference. It is not the new Dan Brown novel. It is not, something you just want to pick up and fly through, like Patrick Rothfuss's, um, trilogy, the final book of the Kingslayer Chronicles. When is it coming out, Patrick Rothfuss? So we've been waiting for it for a dozen years or so. But it's not anything that I think people should read. It's used as a reference, and then you pick out whole chunks of it when you're going through different degrees, and there's some really great stuff in there and really fascinating outlooks, But read Levi as well, before that. So
Mhm.
um and I'm gonna address Stinky Paradox now with his five would refer to Venus more than not.
Yeah.
Five has a lot of important things. So we talk about five quite a bit. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Probably the most famous is the 5 points of man, right? And
Where's the most important American Venus symbol? The
oh, we're
stars.
talking about the
The
Statue of
stars and
Liberty?
the stars and stripe. All of the stars were chosen Venus stars, representing goddess.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha,
And I'll tell you
gotcha.
that's 100% Venus. That has no other.
Yeah.
Can we talk about founding fathers at all?
Yeah, why not? Oh, here. So Stinky Paradox knows a bit. So yeah, thanks for your comments, Stinky Paradox. And Pike declares Venus the chief deity in so many words. Pentagram of Venus 813. I'm not familiar.
I am Sneaky Paradox. I will definitely comment that uh, Pike has declared many deities or forms thereof as the chief deity, and yeah, don't get caught up too much in some of his quotes because you'll find them um, as elegant as the Analects of Confucius, but the teachings may seem contradictory, but they're all pleasant. So it's one of those things where you'll find the same works if he's talking about certain degrees about the Sumerian gods and the eternal battle between light and dark in so many words. And yeah, we can definitely go on him all day, but we're going to move on to founding fathers because we're talking about misconceptions in masonry. And I think one of the founding father misconceptions is, like people believed everybody was Masons, and people believed that it was this and that. And it's like, yes, when you look at the Declaration of Independence, you look at the beginning of our Constitution, there's a lot of Masonic influence in the writing and how it's done. And Jefferson had done that on purpose and copying things, even though he wasn't a Mason. But it was definitely edited and thrown that way. But we never talk about Thomas Paine and common sense and, the newsletters and leaflets that he wrote were the inspiration for George Washington, for all of them. He was the reason that they were called Americans in a positive light. Before Thomas Paine used the term American, American had always been used as a term to describe a yokel. It's like, oh, he's an American. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you're a Virginian. You're a Carolinian. You're this, you're that. And it just American make you sound like a yokel. And that was a really important thing that he was the one who gelled colonies together. And if he knew that, we would have ended up like this, he wouldn't have tried. He wouldn't have, if he thought that we would have won independence from England and had slaves, he wouldn't have ever tried. He would have walked on. He'd have gone to France early, and after the war, he did go to France and he was put inside the French Senate, even though he wasn't really a strong French speaker during the Revolution, because his words had inspired the French
Mhm.
Revolution. And it was one of those
Which
things where he Didn't like Madame Guillotine and was very vocal about, what capital punishment was, and we ended up in
Mhm.
jail. He wrote a very scathing book on religion, pretty much striking down all the five big ones. And yeah, he said it like he felt, about religion being the corruption of faith. And those were his, beliefs. And our deist president, George Washington, and the deist who was in prison in France, um, well, Thomas Paine wrote to George Washington, and George Washington wouldn't release him, didn't let him go, just turned his back on him, because if he did, he would have angered, especially some of the Christian factions in the United States. That's why he couldn't
Mhm.
get Thomas Paine released. He eventually was released and came back to the United States. And let's see, Marquis de Lafayette. Now, Marquis de Lafayette had invested a lot of money into the revolution as well, as well as the ship and everything else when he came over. He was given 14,000 acres. Thomas Paine was given a small house where he pretty much died penniless, where people complained about him walking by their house with his long toenails clicking on the stones.
That's just
There
a
were
weird.
six
He's too
people,
poor to clip
six
his
people at his
toenails.
funeral. Six
That's really
people.
poor.
Mhm.
His long tone, the sound of his long, that seems like a made up story, doesn't it?
Sounded like he was pretty eccentric by the end.
Oh, got it. So it's not for lack of money he can't trim his nails, but he just was
Uh,
he
yeah,
kind of lost it a bit.
not the cleanest person. That's
Yeah.
one good way to say it.
Yeah. And you could imagine him in France getting along. You know what pain means in French?
Bread,
Yeah.
depending on the spelling.
Yeah. Well, yeah, different spelling.
Yep.
Yeah. That's it's kind of funny him going to France and be called Thomas Bread.
I
But
went to Germany with a guy named Franz Stahl. So Franz Steele, like the most German of German names. I am Franz Stahl, so
yeah.
was is das. So, um, all right. So there's some more misconceptions. What else? What else would we want to look at for misconceptions about Freemasonry? Do we want to go to the outside world for non-brothers, or people always ask? I always
Well,
like I always like the misogynist question. It's like, aren't you just a
oh,
bunch
why
of
is there no
freaking
women?
misogynists? Why do you have women in your society?
Well, we've tried to do it. Albert Pike tried that. He developed a ritual for the Lodge of Adoption, and he tried to make it a thing. So the rules are you can't be there during a first degree as per the obligation. So they would all have separate first degrees. And
You're
then
talking
you can,
about Are you talking about the Scottish Rite ritual for the Craft Lodge degrees
no,
and some of the stuff that he
no,
had, or are you talking about okay?
no, yeah, he developed a ritual for adoptive lodges. And the idea is because he was, among other things, an attorney, and trying to find that loophole in the obligation and whatnot. So you just can't intervisit on the first degree, but you can intervisit on subsequent ones, right? So the first degree for both are gender segregated, but then after that, you're all good. So he developed the adoptive lodge, which basically means female lodges, and he was trying to make that happen, but it never really caught on, so it was never really made a thing.
Well, we've seen even more with coal masonry, refracted light, and a bunch of other good sites and different things like that in areas that have been really active for coal masonry. Um, I think that right now, you know, uh, we've had for 125 years women Freemasons that have been organized in lodges and different things along those lines. In 1989, the United Grand Lodge of England recognized, the Women's Grand Lodge in England, and there was another one they didn't recognize, but the one that they did recognize uses all our same ritual and calls each other brother and everything. going into the future, it's one of those things where I find that the lessons of Freemasonry should never be, kept from somebody who's usually our intellectual superior as a gender, and I'll say women. Um, but I think it's even more important that it remains segregated for that gender, for the protection of women, and for them to have the freedom of having their own organization
Mhm.
without having any kind of patriarchal thing. And even Eastern Star has got the balance between, the
Mhm.
two and everything. I think that's terrible. I think that, with this 1.3 million years of, our gender taking on horrible acts of war and rape and, misogyny and, we just talk about pay differences and sexual harassment and everything else that, yeah, men are guilty of. I think, having a separate organization for them,
Mhm.
you know, is great. But just, do it, please. Talk to those Grand Lodges, for women Freemasons and set up organizations and do it right. And, I don't think we'll ever have recognition, or we'll have recognition, but we won't have visitation or anything. And I think that's
Mhm.
fine, but it's one of those things where I just think it'd be really great, having that, but I can't condone it or recommend it as,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that would be against the rules, or at least the what ancient constitutions, or that I mean, the setup that I
in
live in.
admitting or condoning or anything into my jurisdiction would be a violation and an oath and everything. So, but and I will not be a warlock, an oath breaker. But if they joined a different jurisdiction, or that's none of my concern.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if I were a woman, I would want to, but I guess I would be pretty different if I was a woman. But yeah, I couldn't imagine like not learning about masonry. And
I
but
agree.
I think, I mean, just because of the nature of it, do you think it just attracts more men than women?
Not at all. No, no. The only thing that makes it more attractive to men because it's a men's organization, and that's it. And it's one of those things where we don't talk a lot about this, Elliot, but it's one of those things where it's like we ask for help in launch. We're vulnerable in launch. It's like we do all these different things that don't make us, machismo idiots, because we learn how to do this and communicate in better ways. And we're learning to become better men, better fathers, better husbands, better brothers. I think with having any kind of tension in that ways between genders, we would unlearn a lot of what we're doing, and a lot of times when I teach on spirituality in the lodge, I'm talking about stripping away all these physical and material things and wants and needs, what we, complete as our consciousness, what we see as and create as our ego. We have to get away from those things, and doing that in a safer space is good for every human being. And so I think that all human beings need a safe space where they can grow and become better and support each other. And it's one of those things where we can try to do funny TikToks and we can, start really cool Facebook groups but the original social network connection is when you're with people. And I think that, everybody deserves that chance. So, and I think that our lessons are universal and without bias.
Yeah. So, I mean, there can be something similar to Freemasonry. I mean, that
There's
women might be attracted to more. I mean, I'm not against Freemasonry for women, although it's one of those things like, construction workers. It's pretty much all men, right?
Hi, can I say something? Um,
Absolutely not. No way. Okay.
I'm
Okay,
not
just
gonna.
this once. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say I feel like you know these would be good lessons for anybody to be, anything. And uh, I'm going to say, uh, I'm not going to make any statement for any woman in the world. So, and I believe they know the path that's best for them. And one thing I would like is just to show what's out there for different lessons and teachings. But nobody's better suited than the person in their shoes to make their decisions. So,
Gotcha. I feel that there's like a veiled statement in there that I didn't pick up on.
I
Uh,
wasn't veiled. I was trying to be
so
less veiled.
so like
I'm
so
not going to mansplain anything, Elliot. That's what I'm saying.
all right.
No man.
No, I mean like from my perspective, there's certain things that just attract men and certain things that attract women, right? And
No.
Freemasonry is no, like I mean, look at like I said, construction workers, they're all men, right? Women are
Oh,
just not
yeah.
drawn to that kind of work.
No, what are you talking about? Have you been on a construction site lately?
No, but I've driven past them.
Well, obviously you didn't check out everyone.
Well, I was busy driving, but I didn't see
Yeah,
any women
exactly.
there.
Um,
But or like
many
mhm.
walks of lives that we used to have those, preconceptions about are completely diverse now and, opening up and they're becoming more open. So how
Yeah,
about
or
laying asphalt on the street, seeing
uh,
any kind of genders doing that?
yeah,
How
no,
do you know that?
I've seen,
How do you
yeah,
know that was their gender? They didn't tell you what they identified as. So,
they did. I stopped and asked.
oh, now you
Um,
stopped and talked at the construction site.
I just made that up. But I mean, yeah, you wouldn't agree with, I'm thinking there's some jobs that just attract that you don't see like mentally men and women being different.
Let's talk. Let's talk about your gender biases. Let's do a show on
Really?
just your gender biases, Elliot.
Just do a separate show on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
let's just
mean,
straighten you out.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how we would practically incorporate women into Freemasonry. Like you would have to have a setup of just women, right? And it would be hard to form a lodge because, like, how do you get the members to join it? Like, just to start it up, it'd be.
There's practicing women lodges in the United States, women only.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So like not in Minnesota, but in Chicago and Baltimore, and they write to the Masonic Lodge and they say they got 7 people who want to become members. They go and they go through the degrees. They establish a charter in a place where there's no charter for women Freemasons, and next thing you know,
Who
there's a
does?
lodge.
Who gives them a charter?
The well, basically, if you want to have you need 3 lodges to start a Grand Lodge, but if like you have the Grand Lodge, you can get dispensation to start a charter, and start a lodge. You do the work for a year, and you can get a new lodge. It's pretty much similar in the same ways. If you want to start a Grand Lodge, you need 3 lodges. You can do it in a
Well, you need
territory province.
the sponsoring Grand Lodge.
Stinky Paradox,
Mhm.
Eastern Star is unfortunately a blend of both men and women, and also United Grand Lodge of England calls it a clandestine organization. So I don't belong just because of the 22-minute introductions.
Yeah, that's so true. When I joined the Eastern Star, it was like an hour into the meeting, and they were still introducing people.
Yeah,
And
that's
I got there at like when I was the initiation. I think I got there at like 6 p.m. and it ended just shy of 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, I think, and that's just the ritual. And then you go down for pie. And yeah, no, it's long.
It's
But I mean,
let's
I
talk about
enjoyed it
that for
though. I
one
don't want to say
second,
that. Yeah.
just to finish up the misconceptions, and then move on to another one. Um, Eastern Star is not Freemasonry for women. Eastern Star is not, you know, um, something that's strong and supportive that is only women run, and you could get everything you can out of it. And it's one of
Mhm.
those things where it's like, I'm not a member. I'm not going to badmouth. They do some wonderful things, and they raise money for different things, and they do lots of fun activities. Um, I know the beginning rituals and closing rituals, and I think it's obscene, absurd, but people think what we do is absurd as well. So,
Mhm.
hey, it's their business. Let them do it. Keep doing it. Keep up the good work. Go Eastern Star. Yay. It is just not Freemasonry for women.
Yeah, I mean, it is different from Freemasonry for sure. It's like totally different rituals. But yeah, and it's true. It's well, you have to, and they like every year they try to change it so it's not the case, but you have to be related to a Mason somehow.
Let's relate to Stinky
Yeah.
Paradox one more time. I'm sorry. I thought it was a statement, not a question. So that's why I responded that way. So
Oh, got
yeah,
it.
it's like these kids in the punctuation marks, So it's like, yeah, no, I mean, uh, but it was one of those things where it's like, let's go to the next preconception. How about
Well, here, before we do that, here's a very important comment right here. Elliot is correct. So thank you so much for that, uh,
when was
Rahasa.
Elliot's correct about what?
Well,
That's
you don't
the
even need to
question.
preface that with anything. There doesn't need to
Right.
be
Oh,
text.
it's
Yeah.
just the whole show. Elliot's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you're just gonna keep putting that one up like it's a new comment
That's
every like 2 minutes? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, that's a good
Sharing
idea.
that. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that as
Yeah.
well. Uh, can we
So
get the big
yeah,
elephant
so
in the room?
yeah,
Can we
yeah.
get
What is
some
it?
Freemasons are devil worshippers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Maybe you
don't
should talk
really
about that.
hear.
That's always a
Yeah,
misconception.
yeah. I mean, I don't think people believe that anymore. That's not one I've heard for a long
People
time.
people believe that all the time. YouTube channels with Baphomet and different, symbols, and people always going on about, whether it's slowless or whether it's run by, um, you know, Jewish influence or Christian influence or
Mhm.
this influence. And, if you go to Europe, there's a couple of countries that have very much Christian right
Mhm.
organizations where they are basically Christian focused in our jurisdiction alone, and pretty much generally across all the jurisdictions in the United States territories. It's open to all religions. I believe, indeed, you have to have some sort of faith, but it's also one of those things where it's like the deist, and the agnostic and, many of the others, it's all folded in. And one of the biggest questions to remember is that nobody asked me about my religious, preferences
Mhm.
beforehand, just that I had them. Nobody's ever asked me a question about it, from another Mason. And I think that's a really strong,
Mhm.
important thing to know. So, um, yeah, we're devil worshippers, but there are Jews and there are Muslims and there are, Roman Catholics and there are Lutherans and there are, it's like
Mhm.
there's a few famous Sikh Freemasons that I follow online too, and just like it's open.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so anybody from any, you know, religion or whatnot, though I've never, and I mean, I don't go around asking people, but I've never heard of a devil worshiper um, in
It's
lodge.
really funny. It's really funny that you mentioned
Yeah.
that because there was a question that shouldn't have been asked about
Yeah.
someone's faith, and they identified as a Luciferian,
Yeah.
which 90% is great, bringer of light. They follow angels and there's angel work and there's lots of really cool stuff that go along with it.
Mhm.
There's 10% that could be tied into black magic, but it's not really recognized as, what Luciferianism is. And it's one of those things where if you don't understand another person's faith, maybe don't say anything. It's like, why does a Sikh man have a turban and a knife? It's like, if you don't understand these things, don't just make assumptions from the name or what they say. Just like learn about it first because,
Mhm.
it's probably not as devious as you want. And, all the terrible things that different churches or religions have done has been from the seed of, what is corruption. Power corrupts all, absolutely, even the insignificant bit of power and control. So it's one of those things where don't judge other people's stuff, just listen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And on the theme of devil worship, do you remember that Super Bowl commercial? It had to have been maybe 10 years ago now. There's the devil tries to offer a sports car to this guy if you just give him his soul. Do you remember that one?
No.
Facebook was lit up with tend to be the older Masons upset about that commercial, and a whole bunch of Masons got upset because the devil was wearing a Masonic ring.
Oh, right, 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 right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that old Hubadoo. Yes.
yeah. And everybody bent out of shape, and I liked it because like Masonry is being associated with, I mean, a cool devil that can give out sports cars, and this guy is getting a sports car. And if you knew that like a lot of these lodges that they're about 80 years old arguing about the price of printer ink, and there's minutes, right, that take up a good portion of everything, right, like we talked about. Don't you think that would be a better image, this devil giving out the sports car?
There is a reason that we don't have spokespeople in Masonry. It's for people who say stuff like that, Elliot. So
Oh,
no, I don't
geez.
think that the devil in a
No, I
sports
mean,
car is a good spokesperson for Freemasonry. Stinky Paradox, I will check into Bill Schnoebelen. I don't know him, so I will. I'll look at his stuff, and if Elliot has you back on, I will. I'll be able to take it. But I'm going to tell you
okay.
just the
What
yeah.
about those
I'll look at that and get back to you on it. So
Bill Schnoebelen? Oh, okay. So I think I know. This is the guy that he was a rabbi for a little bit, and
I
then he
wrote his
was a
name down. I don't
Luciferian.
know. Yeah, I wrote his name down. I'll take a look at him.
Yeah, and then
I don't
he
want
was
to
a
discuss somebody
90th
I don't know.
degree Freemason.
I
And
don't want to discuss somebody I've never heard of. So
wow, okay, that works. Um,
you don't know, don't say.
yeah, and let's see. All right, but yeah, I mean, as far as like public relations and people's perceptions, the whole devil worship, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, to be associated with that, I mean, it's just kind of like adds a mysterious layer to it. Where I mean, everybody knows that it's not true, right? But it's something that I'm probably maybe not expressing it the best, but I don't think it's the worst, rumor or whatever to have.
There's a there's a few things that have caught on over the years that I think are important for us to address. When they laid out the list of crimes against the Templars, the Philip the Fair, generated, through the Pope Clement, and they, ended the Templars, on Friday the 13th, 1307.
Hmm.
One of the, things they talked about was basically Baphomet,
Hmm.
which was a goat-headed devil and everything. And that image didn't exist back then. The image of Baphomet that we see is actually from Levi, so 500 years later, that's where that comes from, that
Hmm.
image and
Hmm.
everything. And Crowley and everything had adopted it, and several other people had adopted it. But the hard thing about the origin is it was at the time really screwing with the Islamic parts of the belief, and
Mhm.
it's very distasteful and very gross misrepresentation of someone else's faith and the way they represented it. And so the whole Baphomet thing is, something to raise on a banner or anything, is saying we're not going to stand up for this, horrible thing anymore, or stand up. We're never going to endure this again because it was so bad, And then, yeah, I mean, along with, yeah, I mean, that was, I think I'll end it right there with, just don't accept it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say that, there's a lot of it on the internet. And if it has the ring of truth to it, it's probably true. And if it sounds made up, it probably is, and people are researching about masonry, that if it just sounds a little bit too wild, that it doesn't seem real, maybe it's not, um,
I
which
don't
could
know.
be real
AI
people.
AI generated articles are trying to sound more, and more real and quoting fake doctors or real doctors. So, and sneaky paradox. Anytime somebody comes up and says, "Hi, I'm a 90th degree Mason," and la la la, they usually try to grab my arms, like, like some kind of handshake, and I just like smile and nice to meet you. That's it.
Yeah. So it just has to do with the devil worshiping allegations, and it says he's a 90th degree Mason. So within Masonry, saying that there's a degree higher than the 33rd is fighting words, because only the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree and highest degree, right, that they make a point to say this is the highest degree. Um, yeah, so if he's saying he's a 90th degree Mason, it's made up.
One of the biggest things to understand, and outside of our craft and inside of our craft, it's forgotten sometimes too, but there is no higher degree than the third degree, a master mason. And one of the working tools that we proudly present is the level. And the reason that we have on there is that we all meet on the same level. When Harry Truman went to his lodge when he was president, he had two Secret Service guys with him who were Masons. But the master of the lodge was a custodial engineer, a janitor, you know. And guess what? President Truman took off his hat, came in and saluted him with all the other brothers, because there's nobody higher than somebody who's volunteering their time like that, who went through the steps to be prepared to do a good job for the lodge. And it's not about our egos on that. It's about, making sure that we make things better for the next generation, and we let go of our egos and try to make sure we keep preparing things. When people talk about, different levels of different things, and just like, who cares? It's like, really? It's like people don't go, it's like, hey, Nick,
Mhm.
32nd degree Knight Commander of the Court of Honor. No, he's going, hey, Nick, it's like, it's fine.
Mhm.
Stay there. It's like, I've been past master 4 times, which means people call me worshipful brother. I don't care. Just call me brother. It doesn't mean anything. Titles are titles. It's just, something. Yeah, I did the service, but, I'm going to be proud of what I do tomorrow, but not tomorrow. I won't be. The next day I will. It's like, got to keep focused on that. And there are so many different degrees out there, and the Egyptian mystery rites, Mizrain, bunch of Crowley followers, and different things like that. Yeah, they get up to 90, 118 degrees, It has nothing to do with Freemasonry. And in our jurisdiction, yeah, there's nothing that's numbered that's past 33, but that doesn't mean how high a level Mason you are. Once you become a Mason and go through our lessons, in 6 months to a year, usually it takes, and that's it. You're at the highest level. There's no secret communication above them, except for like annual meetings on membership chairs and different things like that. People talk about numbers. It's like, you want to be a part of that? Absolutely. Join a committee, but no,
Mhm.
it's just us. Make sense?
Yep, for sure. And along those lines, there's this idea that it takes years between degrees. So in the Scottish Rite, you can take what 1 or 2 degrees a night. I think sometimes there's three,
We
but
do
the
29,
intention
we
is,
do 29
Mhm.
degrees twice a year, so 6 months. And
Yeah,
the general practice is 5 months, about almost
mhm,
every Thursday with breaks for holidays and different things like that.
yeah,
And, and in
and you can
craft
do the
lodge,
one day as well. So there's kind of nothing. You could actually do Blue Lodge and the Scottish Rite and
there,
only spend 2 days on it if you wanted
yeah,
to.
it's one thing about that, Elliot, is, it's like, first of all, somebody who is, raised the sublime degree of a master mason in one day, or they've done it through the craft with three separate degrees over several months.
Hmm.
Um, there's no difference in that, but it's one of those things where there's so much that you get between the degrees, what you learn and preparing, that I just feel like I would never want you to miss out on that. And but it's like 1994. I hope I'm getting that year right. We had our first one day to masonry in the state of Minnesota. And one of the guys who traveled a lot and made it kind of hard for him to get through the degrees, he went through the degrees. And then the next year, that middle chamber lecture, he delivered it, letter perfect. It's about a 30-minute speech. So
Hmm.
that was a one-day Mason. And that guy, his name is Most Worshipful Brother John Studell. Yes, he became Grand Master of the state of Minnesota, Ancient Free and Accepted Masons. So, and he was in the first one-day class. So I don't want to discount people that have gone through one-day classes, but whenever possible, do the long form. One of the nice things about the Scottish Rite is, if you don't have the time for Wednesday nights in St. Paul, Thursday night in Minneapolis, we're really lucky to have two valleys, with that choice. And you have to do one day, so you can come back for the other degrees that you're going to miss and sit with the class, and wonderful education forums through each of the degrees, and be able to soak in and digest each one. And again, Albert Pike, he always has that skim the surface with a little moral lesson, or here's some allusions to Venus, but when you get into it, it goes deeper and deeper,
Hmm.
and that makes us think more and more about being good and upright people.
Well said.
Any other misconceptions you want to go through today, or we feel like you got a good one?
Well, I can't think of any off the top of my head of, what people would like popularly believe about the Masons. I guess it's that the just not getting it. Like why do the degrees? Why do the ritual? Um, I guess you'd have to experience it more than anything. Or like how does it all work? York Rite, Scottish Rite. Um,
That's another show.
yeah. Which I mean it's hard to explain a little bit. So I
Explaining just the actual accepted appendant bodies, from the shrine to grotto to York Rite to Scottish Rite to allied Masonic degrees to Red Cross of Constantine, which is not a degree, it's a club, but you go through all of them, and it's
Mhm.
you know by the time I get to the tall cedars of Lebanon, you're going to be scratching your head.
Well,
Well, we
yeah.
won't talk about that tonight.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Do you want to talk
Um,
about my sweater tonight? I wore a
oh yeah, Krampus, yeah.
It's almost Krampusnacht, December 5th, so wearing my Krampus. I'm part of the
Oh, okay.
Minnesota
I thought
Krampus Society.
Krampus,
I'm a card-carrying member of the Minnesota Krampus Society, so
yeah. I thought he came on Christmas if you're bad, but he comes if you're bad on the 5th.
if you want, I'll do a Krampus short for you.
Yeah, we
Okay?
can do it. I'm not super familiar. He's like the anti-Santa, right?
No.
No? Oh, geez.
Mm. He works with Saint Nick. Not Santa is actually a composite of Saint Nick and Krampus put together. Santa meaning saint. Krampen is German for claws. So it's Saint Nick and Krampus put together is Santa Claus. That's where he came from.
Wow.
Yeah. The big bag of
Huh.
toys over his shoulder, that was actually
Yeah.
a big bag of kids. The bells on his belt, do you think St. Nicholas wore bells on his belt? No. It was to warn that the Krampen were coming, the Krampus. It's
Huh.
off Krampus.
Yeah,
The red and
that's
white trim, that's the colors of St. Nicholas.
yeah.
But even before that, it was the North Star, and that was done on the solstice, and that was before Christianity. So, but then the Christian, when they moved in throughout Europe and everything, they couldn't get rid of the North Star with Krampus, and so they adopted the traditions, and eventually ended up with Saint Nick and Krampus, and then Santa Claus to replace that.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I'm a dork. I know
So
the dorky stuff.
it's kind of like the yin and yang of Santa Claus. You can be good. There's the carrot and the stick to make kids behave, right?
No, good kids get treated, get treats from the North Star or Saint Nick, in Christian mythology, and they get rewarded for it. And the bad kids either get a lump of coal, you know, let him know that they're going to go work in the mines for their sins, or they get consumed on the spot, or they get beaten with a whip made out of birch sticks, you know. And that's why, and then like the back of my sweatshirt, or sweater, excuse me. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see the kids?
Yeah, they in like a trash can?
A basket, yeah, a woven basket, or a bag, it's like a
Yeah.
woven thing. So they get taken away and they work in the mines for a year or two. So, and if you really want to learn more, take a look at some of the parades in Berlin or other places. Just put Krampus Parade Europe, and you're going to see some great videos. Some of them have up to 200 Krampuses behind St. Nick. So, and they actually
Yeah.
take kids and put them in cages. It's awesome. That's why there's such better kids there.
Yeah, that's what we're doing wrong, I guess. There's no
Oh,
Krampus.
that's it. That's it.
You
That's
gotta,
one thing. One thing we're doing wrong.
yeah, put the
Everything
put
else
the
right.
Krampus back in Christmas, right?
Yep. Well, Elliot and all the people watching, have a wonderful Krampusnacht.
Yep, absolutely. That's a good way to end it. Thank you much. Thank you so much for watching, everybody that watched till the end. And yeah, have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Elliot.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.